Aloha, everyone, and welcome to the show. What is up, Flow Riders? Today, we have an awesome show. I am your host, Doc Rock, along with my awesome co-host.
Hey, everyone. I'm Katie.
Hey, Katie. That's my favorite part. I don't know why. All right, so let's get into it. Katie, what we got popping today?
We are doing another podcasting. I've been calling them case studies, but really, I mean, it's just an awesome opportunity to get to chat with other amazing podcasters in the space to see what their workflow and their process is and how they got started and answer all of the questions. So super excited that we somehow tricked Jennie into joining us so that she can talk all about her podcast Acquire and also probably a little bit of some of the work she does with Capshow. We are running a challenge with Capshow right now. So that's how we met Jennie and that's how we have been connected with her. So yeah, that and everything in between, but casual show to chat podcasting.
If I do mine, if it's a basket case study.
It's a total basket case study. That's why we don't bring you on to talk about your case study.
Without further ado, let's bring on Jennie.
Hey, Jennie.
Hi. I'm like laughing the whole way back in the green room, right? Especially the way you're like, hi, I'm Katie. I was like, oh my God.
Dude, thank you. Okay, it's not just me. Every time it just cracks me up. Hi, I'm Katie. It's my favorite part.
Yeah, we thought that intro would be like, in my mind, it was initially going to be this like, I'm Doc and I'm Katie. And then it never has pulled off that way. It's always just been like, I'm Doc. And then me being like, what do I say? So we've never really pulled it off and we've just embraced the weirdness of the intro. So there it is.
Go with it.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. All right, let's get into it. So how you doing, Jennie?
I'm good. Since the last time I saw you. I'm good.
Yeah, like what was that yesterday?
It was.
Yesterday? Oh my God. So good. So I have this thing that I'm just always super curious about because one of the common conversations in doing a podcast, of course, is the why. So when you started your show, what was the why?
Darn it, that's a tough one. Holy crap.
See that, class? I did it.
You did it. You stumped me on the first. I can't even believe it. All right. Honestly, do you want the marketing answer or the real answer?
No, we want the real answer.
No, we want the real Jennie answer.
Okay. Real Jennie struggles with consistency with her own marketing. Great at marketing everybody else. Really crappy at marketing myself because I actually don't like being on camera or hearing my own voice, if I'm quite honest. Okay. I'm a behind the scenes person. I was like a stage manager in theater. I want to be the person directing people. I don't want to be the person like out in the front. But so the whole point of and the why of Acquire and my previous podcast was all just to create consistent content so that I have zero excuses. Because if I commit to something, I don't stop. Like I committed to swimming every single morning. I swim every single morning. If I don't swim, I'm pissed. If I actually like and I won't miss a podcast. Like I just, it'll come out come hell or high water, even if I'm sick. So once I commit, I'm good. It's just getting me to commit. So that's my why.
I love it. So it forced you into committing. That's incredible.
Yeah. Once I'm in, I'm done.
Just get in the game.
Yep.
Man, that is awesome. I think it's one thing that's hard for people to really understand. Sometimes the best way to get going is to get going. Really, 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 you just have to start. And yes, and people, we all start ugly. Like, it's just what it is. No matter, I don't care who you are, how you've been doing it. Even if you go back and look at some well-established shows and you see their first or second shows, they're legit hot trash. It takes time to get that build-up going. And once you have the mode, you can just keep it going. But it's real easy to just sit back and like, I just want to keep doing this and checking these boxes and making sure it's never okay. So just go. Yeah. It never gets okay. Even today, we're having some weird technical issues, but they're minor. Just keep going. It happens.
Yeah. Right. I mean, that's how you learn. We're as you said, we're always saying to just start, like to just pick up and go. And I know that that's hard for people to wrap their heads around, but you're not going to learn and you're not going to grow if you don't just get going. So there's no other way to do it other than to jump in, which is intimidating. But as you were saying, it's how you're going to build consistency. It's how you're going to start shaping your content. And likely you're going to, as you look back, I mean, even as we look back over, we just celebrated 2 years here on this show. And like our initial concept for this show has changed slightly, and we did last week all about our checklist, and that's like evolved, you know, how we've approached kind of our workflow, and all of that has evolved over time. So things we didn't even think about, things that, you know, have popped up in the space that, you know, made sense for us to cover have come, but we would not have been here had we not just started it with, you know, whatever idea we thought would work well, and then evolved it as we went. So I think that's great.
Yeah, and it's still crazy that we just passed like 2 years. It still blows my mind. Like, you know, this is just a little experiment that just kept experimenting.
Isn't that everything though? Isn't that marketing? Like, it's an experiment that just keeps experimenting because it works, or you shift it and change it. I mean,
it's like the sourdough mother. It's just still going. Yeah. Speaking of sourdough mothers, hey, Paul.
So, Jennie, I wanted to talk a little bit because you and I are pretty similar on a variety of different levels. We are both Canadian, we are both English people, and we are both, I think, pretty organized. We're like type A organized people. Yeah. So as you were thinking about...
You mean English majors, right?
I know,
not
must
like,
be English
lit majors.
Top of the morning to you, spot of tea.
Like, yeah, also we're not, a little bit of the like you know, a fan of English culture.
Yeah, exactly. That's I think that's a little bit of a Canadian thing.
It is.
But I wanted to talk through your workflow for your show and kind of thinking about it from where it started versus where it is now. So when you were first getting started and you were working to build consistency, what did the workflow look like, and then how has it evolved over time?
So back to that consistency piece and what the flow was, the whole reason this podcast started was my partner. My partner is a marketing genius. And he said, you need to be consistent. You need to be doing the content thing. And I said, but what? Like, and I did the whole like almost weaponized incompetence, but I don't know what to do. And so within like 24 hours, we had a name of the show. We had a graphic for the show, like a logo for the show, which he designed. Right. And we just started getting it set up. But like, he was the boot in the butt. I respond well to boot pushing in the butt. And so if it hadn't been for him, it wouldn't have started. The flow has changed. So, the training wheels are off. I have I'm running the show and everything. So my flow is pretty, I record on a regular basis. I actually have, at the time that we're recording this, I have all my episodes recorded until middle of January, 2025.
Wow. That's awesome.
Shut
Congratulations.
the door.
Except for my solos. But I procrastinate. So I do interview and then solo, interview and then solo, but I procrastinate on my solos till the day before.
Oh, that's really a fun format. So you rotate back and forth between a solo show and an interview show?
I do.
I love that.
Weirdly, the interview, the solos actually do better than the interviews on downloads.
Huh.
I'm not sure why.
It's because you're awesome.
Because they know what they're getting. Yeah. I think that's most people. That is a very, very valid statement, and it is something that a lot of people do, especially in our community, because they're seeing us, right? Yeah. They think that they have to do an interview show. And I'm like, you're brilliant at what you do. Mm-hmm. And for that reason, you're perfectly fine to go solo. But a lot of people refuse to go solo. But one thing that you just stated, which is proof positive, people know you and they know what to expect. Yeah. And something that Mary Lou and I were talking about on our show is that people are still throwing around this terminology about, authenticity type situation, right? Mm-hmm. And that's such a farce. It's not really true. No one really wants you to be authentic. They technically want you to be consistent. Because what a lot of people do with the quote unquote authenticity is they use that as a capability or an excuse to be a jerk, right? No, I'm just keeping it real. Like, oh, I'm just blah, 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 blah. And it's like, no, you're not. You're being a jerk, right? Yeah. So in a way, they know that you're going to show up and know exactly what value you can bring. Every time you bring in a guest, you're adding a delta that is basically a gamble. So if most people, please listen, like you can do this by yourself. You're smart. That's why people hire you to do what you do. So I've
been thinking actually a lot about this because Colin Gray was on the show a couple of episodes ago. He's the genius behind the Podcast Host and Alitu and a bunch of other great podcasting resources and tools. But he was saying that he actually challenges himself and his team and people who are new to podcasting to do, I think it was the first 15 episodes of your show alone. Like, even if you don't use it, like just to get into the habit, because it is, and I'll say this, this is actually something I have not done. It is scarier. Doc doesn't like that word, but it's a crutch. It's scarier. It's whatever word you want to put in to do it by yourself than to have like a buddy to bounce ideas and concepts and just banter back and forth with. So I think it's actually a really good challenge and a good like way to get better at content creation. So I'm starting to do more of that now, as I have co-hosted shows, so I can't really kind of reinvent that wheel, but I can do it when I'm recording like short video content, or even just record more video content myself by myself to just get in the practice of doing it. Cause it's like a skill that you're learning. So that's why I think your concept is really neat, that you're, forcing yourself to, which I know is probably not your comfort zone, into kind of being by yourself for a bit. Cause it's good still like reps that I think it's important for all of us to build.
It is.
Yeah, I want to make sure that we cover this because Rich asked in the chat, and I saw that you answered him in the chat, but I want the home team to hear this. You had mentioned when you say more, Rich's question was, did you mean more downloads or more listeners, more engagement? So I want to make sure the home team can hear that, because that was a good question from Rich.
Yes, it is actually more downloads and more listens on the solo episodes. And then when I look at the Google Analytics, there's more people actually hitting the podcast site and looking at the content. And then from there, they're actually going deeper into, they go over to my personal website and they go deeper into that website. So I'm seeing the carry, which is really, really great. And then I also see, some downloads of freebies and things like that more on the personal, because I mention them. And that makes more sense. But to your point about comfort zone, in 2019, I was launching a challenge, and I didn't want to do lives or anything because this is before I had a podcast. So I did 56 lives in 23 days.
Wow.
And it solved my go live bug. Like, I could no longer glitch. There was no glitching to be had. There were no there were no glitching out. Like, all the glitching was done. I knew what buttons to press. Like, I could do the live, no problem. I was showing up, in a hoodie by like the 50th one. I'm like, what up, people? Like, I'm sleeping. Let's just get this over with. But, yeah, it was funny.
You know what's funny is it's hard to explain to someone that hasn't done something like golfing or tennis or even swimming for that matter. Like, until you've been in that pool like 50 times, like, you're really just splashing water around. But after you got like about 50 days or so in the water, there's a different flow. It's really weird.
Yeah.
I just try not to use that word.
Something
but it's
clicks.
a different flow, right?
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah, muscle memory. It becomes muscle memory. And so, again, a lot of the things that people are tripped up on or stuck on is not knowing how to do something. And I just want to remind everyone, none of us came out walking. Like, we fell down every day for like 2 weeks, and then all of a sudden you started running, and some people never stopped. So, your vocabulary started with, and then now you have full conversations about stuff we don't want to hear about. Yeah, some people keep the speaking of which. So man, it's really cool that you just dive in and just started, and now it's just a part of your life.
Yeah, it is. And the flow that I have running behind the scenes, because somebody put a comment like, oh, it must be hard to, do the interview process, right? Like, I find that part easy because I have it systematized. Like, it's completely automated. And so I don't have to worry about it. I don't have to worry about it until the pre-call, because I do a pre-call with people I don't know. And then if they, that there's an approval process for that. And then once I do the interview, then there's a whole automation behind that. Luckily, when I did have a podcast, the first podcast I launched was with somebody else because it felt safe again. And that was during the pandemic. And we got the process really, really down. So when I launched this one, I already knew all the things to do. So it was, have Airtable, have form, if this, then that sort of segmentation into like if they're approved or not. So all that stuff is there. It makes it easy. I find that part easy. I actually find interviewing very, very easy. I find the solos more difficult because I've got to think of my own material to last, 25 minutes. And some days it comes really, really easily because it's a rant and that I don't need to, worry about. But then other days it's like, oh my God, what the frick am I going to talk about this week?
All right. I'm curious. What's your biggest rant at the moment?
My biggest rant right now is people who say they want marketing, but then don't trust their marketers.
That's a good one.
Pisses me off.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. It's like the most undervalued, like if I can put it in air quotes, department in your business, because everybody thinks they know the marketing. Like you trust the person who's editing your podcast because you don't know how to edit it. Or you trust the person who's doing your Facebook ads because you don't know how to do Facebook ads. Those kinds of things. You trust people. But when it comes to marketing, all of a sudden the founders and CEOs think they have a marketing like MBA or something. They think they know all the stuff. And all of a sudden you get like all of this second guessing. And I'm like, dude, I've been doing this for so long. I know what's going to work. Just trust me. And I'm not talking necessarily about myself, but that is my biggest beef right now.
That is super funny.
It's a good one. I feel that one.
Yeah. You would.
And the people that sort of blend branding and marketing, and just think that they're somewhat the same when they're not. And then the other one that cracks me up now is people that think their branding is just like, oh, your logo. No, it's not. No. That's brand identity. That's a different situation.
It's completely different. They're completely separate buckets. And I don't even touch branding necessarily. I did used to do branding and branding identity. I actually rebranded 2 Fortune 500 companies back when I was in corporate. Whoa. I will never do that process again.
It's an intense process.
Each time it took at least 9 months just to get from A to, AB. It was just, so it's hard. It's really, really hard. One of the people that I worked for and I did a rebrand, their logo was a bitmap off of Google. They took it, they stole it. So when I joined the company in their marketing department, I was like, we have to do this, right? And the CEO got about 3 inches from my face. And he said, if you change my logo, you lose your job. And I said, but you hired me for this. So if you're going to fire me now, because I'm changing this logo like tomorrow.
Yeah. If you don't change the logo,
lawsuit.
We all get sued.
Lawsuit.
Man, that is crazy. Well, a lot of people think that their company is like wrapped up in their logo. And I'm like, if that's what your customers are staking with you for, you have a huger problem. Yeah. Huger. That's a good word.
That's a good word. Well, on the marketing side, how are you approaching marketing and promoting your show? So what are the channels you're leveraging? Obviously you have a marketing background. So for those of us who are watching and listening in the chat, what are the kind of places that people should be thinking about marketing and promoting their show?
I'm heavily putting time into LinkedIn right now. So there's a lot going on.
From a lot of people.
Yeah. And it's working. So I was really putting a lot of time into Instagram, and I feel like Instagram is dual personality right now and can't figure out which one is going to be dominant. And I don't have time to play with that at the moment. So I will put the performatory post on Instagram, of course, and I'll put stories and stuff like that. But I'm spending my time on LinkedIn. So I'm putting out my full episodes get up onto YouTube pretty quickly, like next day. And I do have a LinkedIn newsletter that talks about something based on the podcast. And then the podcast is embedded in that LinkedIn newsletter. Right.
Yeah.
And then do proper SEO, because LinkedIn is really, really useful in that space. And it's honestly, it's free traffic. So I do that. I get quite a bit of traffic from that, which is great. And then somehow in May, an algorithm worked in my favor. I don't know what or where. And all of a sudden my downloads went through the roof for May and June. Cool. The algorithm now hates me and doesn't do the same. But I don't know what happened there, but I think it was just a blip. I do have the steady increase that, everybody wants, but I couldn't believe it. I was breaking records and stuff for my own podcast. And I was like, I'm not doing anything and it's getting better. And then
like, I'm kind of a big deal.
yeah, I'm, ooh, somebody likes me. And then the algorithm said, sorry, that was a joke. And now back to regular numbers. But yeah, no, LinkedIn's where I'm spending a lot of time. YouTube, because I listen to Doc and Doc says YouTube. So I do what Doc says. Doc's voice
Doc's just
plays in my
collecting
head.
sound bites. Every episode we do is just collecting
Louise, we are clipping that section,
Right?
Louise. Okay, and I need it in 4K, by the way. So listen, people, every other platform is doing video as a garnish.
Mm-hmm.
YouTube only does video.
Yeah,
and people they still like, I'm going to go try to do it over here. Cool, but even the owner of that company is doing video as a garnish. It ain't even fries. We're talking like that little weird relish on top of a burger on most of these platforms, right? Instagram might be trying to turn it into fries, but they keep switching their mind. But for YouTube, is a big ass burger. There is no sides. There's nothing else. Like It is only video. So when your potential clients show up on YouTube, they came to watch a video. Yep. Everybody else will watch a video by accident, or I'm on LinkedIn. I'm doing LinkedIn-oriented things. If I have enough time, I'll watch a video. Mm-hmm. If I don't have a time, I'm not watching a video. I like that parsley. Yes, for most of these other guys, it's parsley. But for YouTube, it is the whole sandwich. Mm-hmm. With poutine. Sorry, let me keep it.
Hey, yeah, it's poutine.
It's the whole poutine, cheese curds and everything.
Yep.
Yeah,
and the good gravy.
Cheese curds. That's my favorite part.
The Saint Hubert gravy.
Oh, stop, Jenny! I'm going to be really upset. This next week's episode will be live from Canada, so that I can have poutine.
Rich is up with the questions today. Rich said, "Would you like a LinkedIn personal page or a company page or both? Like when you do your get down."
I'm doing it on personal. So I haven't invested any time whatsoever, and it might be to my detriment, but I haven't invested any time whatsoever on a company page at all. So I just spend it on my personal one. I grow that. I get lots of requests for connections every week or whatever. I do some DM outreach as well, which is cool. And I meet a lot of people. If I can be quite honest, I do invite people to be on the podcast and go through the rigmarole of booking a 15-minute call and have quite a few conversations, because I use that as a really great gauge to meet people, but I also use it as a great gauge to get on their podcasts, right? So there's a lot of people who want to do a podcast swap, and I'm pretty particular. Like I don't just do podcast swaps just for the sake of it, but I will take that 15-minute call to connect with somebody, because they could be a good referral partner for something else. They could connect me with somebody else. They could be great for the podcast. I could recommend them for something. So yeah, I kind of like those 15-minute calls, although I put them into my calendar in a very small spot. Like you can only book it in a really small spot. But I'm
with you though. They've made a big difference. So I don't necessarily do it as in quite the same process, but I will say, like, for the VHS Club podcast that I do, a lot of my initial people are all because of Doc. So Doc is awesome for that. But a lot of people that I've met through Ecamm or through this show, when they find out that I have the other show, you're like, oh, I'd love to be on the show, or I'd love to have you on, our show. And it does help you open up to a different audience, but it also like builds that connection back with that person. Like a lot of those shows now, I notice now I'm listening to their shows or watching their shows more often, and they're talking about my show, and now I'm remembering their show. So like we're, even just by becoming friends, we're now promoting each other's shows more organically and naturally. So I do agree that you need to be picky about it, but it is a really great way in kind of leveraging platforms like LinkedIn, where people are taking things more seriously than like a Facebook or an X, where you can really build some of those relationships and find those opportunities to be able to cross promote or get to know each other better.
I just had the weirdest thing happen not too long ago that blew my mind. I knew I'd hit like a level when this happened. Is my partner was in his car driving to a golf game, and he heard somebody on a podcast say, yeah, well, you should go and check out Jennie Wright, because she's the queen of summits and you should talk to her about list building. And he's like, I almost swerved off the road. This is crazy. Right. So like completely, and a podcast I had never listened to with people I don't even know. Like I have no idea who they are. So somebody from somebody did something, and these people got to listen to it. And I was having like a brush with schmarminess moment. Like, oh my God, like, somebody knows me.
Man, you know, it's so funny. I was at Podcast Movement in Denver last year, and Ryan says to this guy, he's like, oh my God, I got somebody you need to meet that would probably help you out. This dude, Doc, like, you got to know. And then my friend Mike was like, Doc Rock? And he was like, yeah. It's like, oh man, I worked with that guy like 20 years ago. And he goes, yeah, he's here. And I didn't know Mike would be at this type of show. And then all of a sudden, I see this gigantic Canadian dude walking around the corner, Doc! And I was like, oh my God, it's Mike. So Mike Vardy, he's a productivity specialist. He wrote the book called The Productivityist. He's all about to do a whole bunch of books out there about productivity. And it was just really weird that Ryan basically was like, oh, you got to meet Doc. And then I just also found out that Dan was a pro wrestler. I completely didn't know that. All the podcast movements I didn't know Dan used to be a pro wrestler.
It is like, it is funny crazy. That like how big a space podcasting is, it is also still a small space. Like it's not all that hard to get to know the people that are in your, like even in your niche in podcasting. And events are great. I mean, Doc and I are talking about this all the time, but getting out to events, even if it's like a podcasting meetup in your town, even if you have to host a podcasting meetup in your town, like getting out in front and with other podcasters makes a huge difference. I mean, like, we went to Doc went to the podcast summit with Caleb and some of our team members, and some of our listeners showed up and helped out and were there. And even like people from Podcast Summit that literally like we met the first time at Podcast Summit are now participating in the challenge that we're doing. Yeah. Like they're like, oh, we found you. So like so, you know, it's harder to track a lot of those relationships.
It's one
obviously,
of the best marketing tools.
It's the best marketing tool, in my opinion, anyway, to be, if you can figure out a way to build that, or spend, like Jennie was saying, spend like, even if it's a little bit of time, like blocking off that little bit of time to be intentional about that can go a really long way. And not just even for guests, but just even like listening to someone else's show and leaving them a comment or sending them an email or leaving a review, like just starting to build those relationships, I think really matters.
It does. It does. I need to spend more time on that.
I think it's one of the things where, you know, people always say this, and I think some folks believe it's a cliche, but I don't think so, because I know that's how I shop. People really don't buy just because of some feature or something. People buy because of people, right? And then once you get to know the people, you stay. Dina always used to say this, I bought the software to do some video recording, but I stayed for the community. You know, because our people are cool. Like, you know, even people who don't use Ecamm that come and hang out every time. Saeed, looking at you, but like that's just part of the community, and everybody loves the community. So, how do you explain or work with people to teach them more about how to let themselves be part of the podcast or the show, so that their clients can see more of them, which then leads to that deeper connection?
I'm not going to say the word authenticity.
Yeah, pick a different word.
Say it, Jennie. We'll keep Doc from hitting you. Say whatever you want to say.
Most people just use it as a marketing term, and they don't really mean it.
I know.
And you know how I know that? Because they were like, well, I can't go live right. Why? Oh, I don't have my makeup on.
Oh, so I have a whole thing about that. So I hate being on camera. The left side of my face is paralyzed, has been since I was 19 years old, and I had wisdom teeth removed. I can't feel the side of my face. So I know it's a whole thing. Nobody realizes it until I tell them.
I get that when I talk back to my mom.
So to get over my own feeling of like, everybody can tell that I can't feel this side of my face, and I had to relearn how to talk.
No one can tell.
I had to relearn how to talk. This is the whole thing. And so if I fall into my own thing about how I look or my face or whatever, then I'm robbing people, the world, of my gift, my skill, my ability, because I look at things differently than anybody else who's in my niche. And that's just normal. That's not patting myself on the back. If I don't do this, then I'm robbing people of that gift. So when I want to motivate a client, because all my clients, I make them go on podcasts, they hate me for it, but I embody Doc, the drill sergeant, and I say, suck it up, because you're going to do it. It's going to benefit you. You're going to have a great ass time, but just get over your little whatever yourself. Because if you don't do this, then you're robbing the world of that one thing that you should be doing that everybody needs in your niche.
That's my exact same answer. You are being selfish. You just don't realize it, but you're being absolutely selfish because you're robbing the world of your brilliance over a hang up that nobody will care about except you.
Exactly. Nobody knows.
That is so good. All right, people, you heard that? Jennie told you exactly what I've been telling you for like 2.5 years. Y'all people, listen to her then. She's Canadian.
She's like halfway between Doc and I, literally in the middle of Doc and I, literally and figuratively today. Yep. That's amazing.
It's the hate gradient. It's so nice.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Totally.
Absolutely. I just, you got to get, like, you just have to kind of get over whatever it is. And then, you know, to be really transparent, when I left corporate, I went through a really like tough adjustment because I had been corporately bullied, right, by one of my bosses and stuff. And I had some trauma around that, whatever you want to call it. And to try and build up this business, I felt really small. And I didn't feel like I was worth showing up as the face of the business, that I was really good being in the back. And that I could do good work in the back. But I wasn't growing the business, right? So when I started realizing that, and this is right before I started podcasting, that things weren't growing at the speed that I wanted them to. Like I could look back and say, year 5 was the same as year 6, as the same as year 7 and year 8. I was like, okay, something's got to change. What is it going to be? Podcasting seemed like a really good idea to get over myself. I did that challenge with the 56 lives in, 23 days or whatever. And I got out all my glitches. I'm now glitch free. And it just felt like I know I have to do this. I hate doing it, but I'm going to do it anyways. And the explosion, the thing is, it creates this momentum and it pays back dividends, right? So you start doing it. I make it what I call a non-negotiable, just like making your bed or brushing your teeth. Podcasting is now my non-negotiable. And the results that come from that are obviously things like more website visits, more landing page visits, more requests. I get asked to be on podcasts now. I don't have to actually search for podcasts. People are always coming to me now, which is fabulous. Right. And all of the things just start to cascade in that way. And it just like, it starts paying off and you're like, why didn't I do this like 10 years earlier?
Yeah. Oh my God. There's so much in that. I hope this is our other soundbite. Today's episode is brought to you by Soundbites from Jennie. But seriously, no, like it is really, you just said it so, I think, perfectly, that there are so many of us, and I've almost have been in almost the exact same boat as you, where I was like, I'm good behind the scenes. I like feel confident there. I know that that's my strength. And like, I'm a good organizational person. I know I can promote. I have a marketing background, but no one needs to see me on camera. And I'm sure that other people listening and watching this also feel that way. And we're all wrong. They do. They need to see you on camera.
And nobody's
they don't
looking
care
at you.
what you look like. No one's looking at you in the way that you think that they're looking at you. They really just want the information. And so I think it makes, I feel the exact same way, Jennie, where I was blown away at even like my like high school friends who were sending me notes that were like, oh, like I see now that, I see you've been working in podcasting and like, I actually have all these questions for you about, so like people who I was like, they don't want to hear from me about that. They don't want to hear, from me in this format about that. I was wrong. Like I was publicly wrong and continue to be wrong about that, where I get messages all the time. So I do think it matters a lot. And I love that like we have had a number of guests on over the last 2 years of this show. And what I want to just keep like hammering home to everyone that watches and listens, that it doesn't matter what your flow is, right? Like, so we created the show to talk about like what the workflow is. It actually doesn't matter what your workflow is. So like none of us have said to Jennie, oh my gosh, Jennie, you're doing it wrong. You're not live streaming your show. You only just now started using Ecamm. You've done it wrong. Like, cause it's a path and it's a journey and it's iterative and you're making changes and edits, and what works now might not work tomorrow. You might need to make a different change, but you are going big, you're being intentional, and you're making those changes as it goes forward. And Jennie's doing batch recording and is way ahead of where we are, but her process is working really well for her. Our process is working really well for us, and they're totally different. Yeah. So it doesn't matter what your workflow is. It just matters that you start and that you do it and that you monitor how it's working and make those changes as you need to.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really good. And you know, as you start your flow will get better. Hank said this in the chat like a couple of minutes ago, and it was brilliant. It was absolutely brilliant.
Gold star Hank.
Gold star Hank. Yeah, hey, it's not getting easier. You're just getting better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like it's the same amount of work as it always is. And that, I think people undersell that all the time. Mm-hmm. And I think I even do that. So big ups, Hanks, for coming up with that, because that is true. Even we're talking about walking, like something that everybody just does, mm-hmm. right? Walking is a very difficult process. Is why we're some of the only, things on this planet that can do it, right? You know how we know walking is difficult? Because down the street from Ecamm is a brilliant company called Boston Dynamics. And it has taken them 25 years to emulate human ambulation.
Robot.
And all of these people at Boston Dynamics went to freaking MIT. That means every one of those people is smarter than all of us combined individually. And that thing still kind of walks like a drunk old person. Right?
Or runs at you and you're like, it's coming at me. It's terrifying.
Or runs and falls down or whatever. So just to show you how difficult walking really is, and yet we all do it all the time. Mine's is going backwards now with the bad knees, but it is definitely one of those things that you just got better. It did not get any easier. So thank you, Hank, for that. And thank you for sort of highlighting that, or let's make it proper, elucidating that as you discuss your story.
Well, Saeed had a really great question I wanted to pull back up specifically about niches. And so thinking about how important are niches? How do you find your niche? How did you, obviously you come from a marketing background. So part of it was, probably highlighting your company, but how did you approach what niche Acquire would fall into and how to think through about what topics you were going to cover?
Oh, I wanted to niche in really tight. I wanted to be talking, originally Acquire was going to be about list building, lead generation, events and courses. And I pretty much stay in the vein of those things like lead gen, which is where I live in my marketing sphere. And that's where I kind of stay. But I will go out to what I call niche adjacent. So something that's trotting alongside at pretty much the same pace as I am with what it's doing. I will definitely dip my toes in, for the podcast, for interviews and so on. So I will definitely talk about that, because those things, because they're adjacent, I look at them as they're either in support of or they benefit from. And if either one of those questions is yes, then I'll talk about it.
Love that. Support of or benefit from. I love that.
Man, listen, everybody has been to the diners with the 700-page menu.
No one likes the 700-page menu.
Nobody really likes those places. You kind of go to them because you have to. Every country, every city, every town has one of those type of things that you go to. Denny's is an example, or
Cheesecake Factory.
For us is Zippy's or Cheesecake Factory. Yeah. Nobody goes there because they want to. You're not taking a date to that place. The places that you go to get the meal that you really, really enjoy, those places got 5, 6, 7, 8 things on the menu tops, or they specialize in a type of cuisine, a very specific type of cuisine. I don't want to go to Cheesecake Factory and get Italian and Hungarian and quote unquote American and quote unquote fake Asian and quote unquote fake Indian, which is also Asian, which is Cheesecake Factory. Why do you split them? Come on, no, right? You just don't. So any place that you go to, that this is the spot. Rich took Katie and I to Terry Black's. Terry Black's is world famous for their barbecue. Mm-hmm. They got
stop brisket, it now, I'm starving.
Brisket, ribs, sausage, beans, coleslaw. Can I get biscuit, ribs, beans, coleslaw? You know what I mean? That's what they have. That's what they do, right? Maybe I forgot mac and cheese, but you know what I mean? They got the basics, right? So yes, you need to niche down. And I will say this every single time. If you think your market is everybody, your market is nobody. that just doesn't work. Nothing is an all-arounder for people except for caskets.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I don't know.
And that's not even thing because some of us, we burn. So maybe that doesn't even count. 50% of the population will hit an oven. So yeah, that's it.
Well, it must be time to wrap up because I'm frozen. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, we can hear you. It's a really cool picture, though.
The smile on camera.
I know, at least it's a smile. And this is one of the many reasons why we record our files individually and send them through to Luis so that he can make this look perfect in the replay and the post-production video edit on the other side. But I wanted to be able to close by making sure that we know where to find your podcast so that we can hopefully send some listeners over. So do you want to give us a blurb about where to find you and check in with you?
Absolutely. It's easily found if you go to jennywright.com, and it's Jennie spelled Jennie, like JENNIE. And you can also find it on oddphonic.com. So that's the Oddphonic Podcast Network, but it's oddphonic.com. So it's there as well. And me everywhere, all the things under my name. So come check it out. I'd love to hear what people think of it. Always open to feedback. I have no ego about it. So if you love it, awesome. If you hate it, great. Let me know.
Awesome.
Awesome too. Just like tell me all the things. I may or may not change it based on your opinion. Probably not because I like what I do. So, but I appreciate the feedback.
There you go. That is such gold. I thought you were going to say, is Jennie spelled like Jenny? And I was like, what?
I almost did actually.
That was super funny. Oh my God, that was super funny. All right, guys, that does it. Right after we hang this up, I do want to cover a quick question for Tora, but let's get this out so that Paul has a clean edit point. Not Paul. Luis has a clean edit point. I'm over here reading Paul's comments. All right, gang. As you know, if you need to find anything about the flow, you can easily find us all over the webs at flow.ecamm.com. And that is our pod page. Like, you can go there. You can ask us questions. You can leave us a voicemail. You can leave us feedback or comments. And just like Jennie said, maybe we'll adjust accordingly. Maybe not. I think it's important. I have something to say about that as well. So yes, make sure you check us out at flow.ecamm.com. And we want to give a big ups to Captivate for hosting this show for us. This is where we keep the podcast. It is one of my favorite hosts because of the fact that they work off of a growth-minded mentality. So it's not just put your podcast here and hope it goes somewhere. They actually have tools to help you grow. So go and check them out over at Captivate FM and tell them that the Flow sent you. So yeah, there you go. Thank you, Jennie, for coming on and being a part of the show. We have a tradition around here, and that's just where I go. Flow Riders, out!